Hi and welcome to an extremely cold day. I'm just trying to get myself out of the car, unlocked. I've come to my local village. We're in the middle of, towards the end of January now, 2021. We're obviously in lockdown still. This is my local village. I live literally right out in the country. And the title of this video on YouTube is, I think, going to be street photography with Nikon D700. Let me explain. This village, it's a village. We have maybe about 5 or 6 shops, hairdressers, a fish and chip shop, a post office, very little else. I think there's about three buses a day. It really is a village, and it's quite picturesque, but it's not the sort of place that you would typically go to do street photography. I would tend to go to somewhere like Cambridge, which for me is about a 50-minute drive away. Obviously we're not supposed to do that in lockdown, and I'm not doing it. So I'm here. It's 2:30. It's a very sunny, bright day. And we've had snow over the last couple of days. We've still got a little bit of snow left, and as I say, it's really bright and sunny. And I'm hoping at this time of day we can get some interesting light and shadows, and something which will turn this very ordinary village into an interesting photo. Now I'm using the D700 because. With a 35 f2D lens on, in the hope that that's going to make some really interesting photos. The D700, as I've explained in previous videos, has got a sensor which Nikon have never repeated, because it's only 12 megapixels. And someone explained it to me, all the technical details as to why it's unique, why the D700 is a bit of a legend, and it's not been repeated since. And even my D780, which I have also got with me because I might do a few shoots on the D780 because I've got the my 85 1.4D lens on that, so I'll get some totally different shots just to give me a chance. But mainly we're looking at the D700 here. I think it's about 2 degrees out there. There's a bit of a breeze, so it's going to be really chilly, so I don't know how long I can last out there. But if I find something to photograph, I will stop and we'll have a chat about it, and then obviously we'll look in Lightroom at the photographs afterwards. Fingers crossed. Let's see how we get on. Why am I doing this? I must be absolutely bonkers. Anyway, let's hope it makes a decent video. I've taken quite a few shots, not really called street photography, but maybe we can start a new genre of photography called village photography or something. But anyway, I'm about halfway around my walk that I was intending to do. It's really too cold to try and set the video up and do some video of me actually taking a shot, so we'll just have to make do with me going through them in Lightroom afterwards, and I'll explain the shot. I've got some shots with the D700 and then some similar shots with the D780. Obviously one's 35mm, one's 85. I haven't changed the lenses over, just to see what the how we can recover the shadow details and how each camera deals with the highlights. It'd be interesting to see, because I've got some, obviously in these sort of conditions, some really extreme contrast in some of those shots. We'll take a look in a minute. Gee whiz. What was that for? Only about 25 minutes, I think, and that is absolutely as much as I can stand. I'd love to have spent a lot longer time out there. I've got some interesting, I hope interesting anyway, comparison shots between the 780 and the 700. And well, anyway, let's go home, get warm, and we'll have a look in Lightroom. So So, welcome. Here we are in Lightroom, back in my nice warm office with a nice cup of coffee drunk and warmed up. Right, what I've done is selected these photos here from the, what did I take, 30 or 40 photos I suppose, and we'll go through those. So, these photos imported straight out of camera, absolutely nothing done to the photo at all. D700 with a 35 f2D lens on. So this is a camera from 12 years ago, a lens from, I think it was probably introduced, I don't know, maybe 25 years ago, I haven't checked, but a very long time ago. It's not an up-to-date lens, it's not an up-to-date camera, it's only 12 megapixels, and, well, just how much more detail does anyone need in a photograph? Yeah, it's brilliantly sharp, gorgeous. The colours, they're very subtle. They're very. It's just. I just love the look of the photos from the D700. The D780 is quite similar, but I still don't think if you put them side by side, I would probably end up if I did a blind test. I bet I would pick 80% of the photos would be from the D700 and not the D780 as being the photos that I like. So there was that one. That was just one to get started. So to look at the dynamic range, I suppose, of the D700, but more from a sort of a real life standpoint rather than a laboratory. Oh, it's got 13.6 stops of dynamic range. Who cares? Can you get the shadows back? Can you take a shot like this, which is in really bright sunlight, as you can see here, with really dark shadows here? Can you get some of this shadow back if you wanted to? And if I just lift the shadows there, it doesn't come back. It does come back, but maybe not enough, so maybe we'd have to do a bit more, but let's just have a look. And yeah, the detail is there. If I now drop the highlights probably, and put a bit of black in, we've got a shot that from the sort of lighting point of view I think is perfectly acceptable. There's nothing in this shot which I would not like. So then compare that with a shot from the D780. Apologies for being somewhat drunk on duty. Right, that's better. Just again, literally straight out of camera, absolutely nothing done to that. What would I do to it? Well, I'm not sure actually. Maybe we could lift the shadows and get some detail back in these trees down here. Obviously this sign is actually black, so there's no detail to get back in that. It's just plain black. Drop the highlights a bit. I don't know. I mean, what else do you want to do to it? It's at 1.4, so I doubt if any of these branches are going to be in focus, because unless I was really lucky and they were actually on the same focal plane as the sign, which is what I was focusing on. And obviously, as it's just a black sign, it's difficult to see much in terms of detail, but there you go. Yeah, brilliant. So moving on, next one. Now I have edited this, so and what I'll do actually, rather than take all the editing off and put it on, we'll do a virtual copy and I'll reset the copy so we can do a side by side. So that's what it looked like straight out of camera, and with a little bit of work, that's what I ended up with. So we've got the detail back in the sky, as you can see on the unedited version, completely white sky, and looking at the histogram, pretty much being pretty close to being blown out highlights. Well, in fact, you can see it was showing clipping there, so that is clipped. Nothing we can do about that, but notice this. When we do the adjustments, we don't get a sort of a sudden change from blue to white. it's a nice graduated change. Let me just go back so you can see on here what's clipped on here now. And if we look at what is now actually clipped, well, this is interesting because according to Lightroom, we actually haven't got any clipped highlights. We've recovered all of those highlights. We've got nothing that's gone off the scale here. Brilliant for a 12-year-old camera. That's amazing. If I look at the shadows, we've got some shadows still there, which if we just lift the exposure, I've got some blacks on there, so maybe, yeah, if I take the blacks back up, then we can recover all of the shadow detail as well. Brilliant. What more could you want? And lovely colours to boot as well. You couldn't get much more deep shadows than that, could you? And I think all of that has come back. Yep, everything is back. We've got a nice starburst there. We've got clipped highlights, as you can see there. And if we just drop the highlights, it recovers all the highlights. We have no clipped highlights. Now, I then moved on to this shot. One of the problems I had, one of the big problems I had with the Sony, with the A7 III, which, if you know my story, I had that for 2 years, shooting weddings and all the other stuff. 74,000 shots I took with that. One of the main issues with the focusing, it was really good, but it did have an issue with bright backlight. If I were to take this shot and the sun was literally just behind the chimney here, the Sony would have been hunting back and forth all over the place. I would probably have had to revert to manual focus, or maybe focus on something else which was close to the chimney, maybe on the window here or something like that, to get fairly close, because I'm at f6.3, so it would probably be okay. But it wouldn't focus on anything quite that close to a direct highlight. Nikon, the D700, I just pointed it here. You can't actually see the focus point, but honestly it was actually on the chimney, and as you can see it's focused perfectly okay, no problems whatsoever, and there was no hunting back and forth. It was just hit the focus and it was done. Take the shot. And I did a similar shot with the D780. Let me go to this one first. Sorry. Right, let me go to this one first. Right, let's do... So this was a shot I took with the D780 straight out of camera. Again, focused on the chimney. Sun literally just behind the chimney. Absolutely no problem focusing whatsoever. We're talking through the viewfinder focusing, by the way, not live view. Can we recover that? We can get close if we lift the exposure a bit. So we've now got rid of all the shadow clipping. And have we managed to get focus? Let's get a bit brighter. And as you can see, we have finally a decent, I was going to say decent focus, pretty well perfect focus. We do have some noise as I've lifted the shadows so much. And as you can see, there's zero noise reduction, so we'll put a little bit of noise reduction on there, and that's close enough. We pretty well got rid of all the noise. So no problem focusing whatsoever. Can we also get rid of those highlights? As you can see now, we've got some highlights. This is on the D780. If I drop the highlights, completely recovered the highlights, no clipping whatsoever. And finally, moving on, I thought this was interesting. It's not a direct comparison, but I took a shot here with the D780 focused on the number 7, and if we zoom in, obviously we're going to get a lovely in focus shot there. I did the same with the D700, but with a 35 lens on the 85, so it's a lot further away. I should maybe have walked closer to try and get a much more similar shot. But if we make that a 200% crop instead of 100, then we're comparing pretty much the same sort of shot. Again, I've done no noise reduction at all or sharpening. Okay, so the only thing I would say is you can, at 200%, I'm not sure if it's coming across on the video, but you can start to just see some pixelation on the very narrow parts here, and there's a little bit on this edge here. So 200% is too much for the D700. But if we just look at 100% crop, so this would print, so I'm just looking at that. We'd be printing about a 20 by 16 photo, something like that, and you would have this level of detail. I really, why do you want more? I just do not understand why you need to see the texture on every single brick. It's just distracting. It's crazy, and it loses the whole emphasis. It loses the whole point of the photo, I believe. Anyway, so final shot was this one here, and I've actually edited this using one of my presets up here. It was clipped, but we've got the clipping back by reducing the highlights. I haven't actually put any noise reduction on. So I've dropped the highlights, lifted the shadows a little bit. We've done some stuff to the colours. And I like that photo. That's going to be my photo of the day. I might just get rid of that wing mirror in the car there. And there we go. Beautiful shot. Okay, I hope that's given you some insight to what the D700 is capable of. It is still a wonderfully capable camera, even 10, 12 years after it was in its prime. The only thing it lacks compared to the D750 and the D780, which is what I now have, is functionality. It's got fewer focusing modes. It obviously hasn't got the live view with the Z6 focusing system, so it's got less gizmos, which during a wedding do come in useful for me, and the D780 is a lot easier to use at a wedding than the D700. That said, when I first started to do weddings, my main camera was a D700, and I look back at those photos and I'm perfectly happy with them. There's nothing wrong, and trust me, no one has ever complained about, oh, that's not a very good photo. It's just never happened. So if you're thinking of a D700 for a brilliant legend of a camera, go for it. It's well worth the money. Hope you found that useful. Thanks for watching. Bye.